Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Pleased to meet you, Claudia. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Your Excellency, Secretary General, dear friends, it is with great pleasure that I officially welcome you to Moniz 2012, the biggest simulation of NATO decision-making procedures in the world so far. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for traveling from around the world to share your dream with us. But most of all, thank you to everyone who's made this project possible. A special thanks goes to NATO Public Diplomacy Division, without which we wouldn't be here today. And last but not least, thank you, Mr. Secretary General, for hosting us. In this room and the adjacent one, there are more than 260 people who share common values and a common NATO. Today, we are here to celebrate what started on the 4th of April 1949, and that still lives and evolves, no matter how complex and intricate our world is. Dear friends, we young generations are the future, and with our work, passion, and determination, we will spread a very simple message. NATO was, is, and will always be committed, capable, and connected alliance. We have the honor today to have with us His Excellency NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen, who has so far strenuously worked to show the world how this organization is dynamic and of fundamental importance for international peace and security. It is impossible for me to cover all his achievements at NATO, but I would like to focus on a specific one, so relevant for young people. What strikes me the most about Mr. Secretary General is his Facebook page. Yeah, that's right, his Facebook page. What I truly believe, my dear friends, is that Mr. Secretary General has until now shown us that high-level politics is approachable. Through Facebook, Secretary General shares with us not only great achievements in world politics, but also moments of his private life. From his adventurous mountain bike trips to his long runs in Rome, which, by the way, I don't know how you find the time to do that. I would like to know your secret, but anyway, all this gives me hope, Mr. Secretary General, because sometimes this world is too distant from us. With your work and the image we have of you, I feel we, young generations, have a chance. What we perceive is that behind the head of this vital organization, there is a human being. I would like to personally thank you for this, Your Excellency. Dear friends, with no further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to NATO Secretary General, His Excellency, Mr. Anders Fogh Rasmussen.
Thank you very much indeed for that kind introduction. Dear friends, a warm welcome to NATO headquarters, both you here in the lunch room and you in the brochure room. Welcome all of you. You are participating in the largest ever simulation of the Alliance's decision-making process. And your work will be pretty close to reality. You will be sitting in rooms without daylight, in windowless rooms, where the North Atlantic Council and other committees make and take their decisions. I think it creates the right atmosphere for your discussions. At least you're not distracted. No mobile devices are allowed for security reasons, but it also means there's no distraction. You can't tweet during council meetings. So all in all, you have all chances to concentrate, to focus, to not be distracted through this simulation of NATO decision-making processes. But having said that, NATO is actually difficult to simulate. because NATO is a unique organization. And I would in particular highlight three features that make NATO so unique. Firstly, NATO is the world's strongest military alliance. The core task of NATO is the collective defense of our member states, of our populations and their territories. This is centered around the very famous Article 5 in the NATO Treaty. Article 5 states that we consider an attack on one ally an attack on all. That is the principle of solidarity. All for one, one for all. That's unique. Secondly, NATO is much more than just a military alliance. NATO is a community of values. It is an alliance of 28 democracies founded on individual liberty, democracy, rule of law, respect for human rights. And collectively, we stand ready to defend those values. That's also unique. And thirdly, consensus and cohesion. That's the way we make decisions. Every single decision within our alliance requires consensus. That is, we have to agree, all 28 member states must agree, otherwise we can't take a decision. And you can imagine, it may be time-consuming to get 28 to agree. Think of it, if you have 28 friends and you are to make them agree, it will take some time. And it does, and it takes a lot of patience. It is a time-consuming process. But NATO is also unique because we have a special mindset within our alliance. It may very well be that the 28 can't agree as a point of departure because each individual member state has, of course, its own national interests. Some of these interests may be very strong, but we meet each other with a very special mindset, a consensual approach. We will try to find a solution, not to block, not to veto. So even in the case that there may be differences, we work hard to really try to find a consensus. And we do. It may be time-consuming, but eventually we reach a conclusion by consensus. And once we have made the decision, then we move. And that's the strength of our alliance. It is a result-oriented, it is an action-oriented alliance. It's not just a talk shop. We have a lot of international talk shops. But NATO, yes, we talk a lot to make a decision. But once the decision has been made, we move, we take action. And we have several examples of that. These features make our alliance so unique. And it is a very interesting job to be Secretary General of such an alliance. Now, in our strategic concept, which we adopted in 2010, a new strategic concept, we have identified three core tasks of our alliance. Three core tasks that form what I would call the new NATO. The three core tasks are collective defense, crisis management, cooperative security. These are our three core tasks as outlined in our strategic concept. First, collective defense. That's, of course, at the very heart of our alliance. That's related to Article 5, as I mentioned. The fact that we express solidarity, we will help each other if an ally is attacked. But collective defense goes beyond what it was. when NATO was established in 1949. In 1949, collective defense was very much about defending our borders. But today, if we are to effectively protect our populations, we very often have to go beyond our borders to address the threats where they originate. One such example is our operation in Afghanistan. Why are we in Afghanistan? We are in Afghanistan to prevent the country from once again becoming a safe haven that could serve as a launching pad for terrorist attacks against our societies. That's exactly what we saw on the 11th of September 2001. The attacks on the United States were originated in Afghanistan. So the day after, on the 12th of September, the NATO allies declared that the attacks on the United States should be considered an attack on the whole alliance. And basically, that's the reason why we are in Afghanistan today. So it's an example that in order to protect our populations in our member states, we have to go far beyond our borders. Another example is missile defense. We have decided to establish a NATO missile defense system because we consider the threats from missile attacks a real and growing threat. So in order to protect our populations effectively, we will, in the coming years, develop a NATO missile defense system. That's a new threat, and we adapt to the new threats to effectively protect our populations. We do counter-piracy operations along the coast of Somalia. That's also one of the new emerging security challenges. Who would have imagined a few years ago that piracy would re-emerge as one of the security challenges? But the fact is that our ships are threatened by pirates. So in order to protect our societies against that threat, we need to do counter-piracy operations, again, beyond our borders. So collective defense remains one of our core tasks, but we realize that collective defense today will very often take operations beyond our borders. In today's world, it's not enough just to line up tanks along our borders if we are to protect our populations effectively. Now, the second core task, as defined in our strategic concept, is crisis management. And we saw one such example last year when NATO took responsibility for the operation in Libya. It was an historic event because the United Nations Security Council adopted an historic resolution to protect this population of Libya against attacks from its own government. And as you know, all member states of the United Nations have an obligation to do what they can to implement United Nations Security Council resolutions. And the members of NATO decided that the best way they could implement the United Nations mandate would be to do it through NATO. Because NATO has at its disposal unified command, tried and test structures to cooperate with partners. We have a NATO Council as a political body that can provide transparency and political oversight. For these reasons, NATO allies decided to take responsibility as an alliance for the operation over Libya. During a campaign of 7 months, we implemented fully the United Nations mandate and protected the civilian population in Libya against attacks. Another example of crisis management is the current operation in Kosovo. Since 1999, we have been in Kosovo, and during that period of time, NATO has been the guarantor of peace and stability in that part of Europe. We are still there now with a reduced number of troops because the security situation has improved, fortunately, but there is still a volatile situation in the northern part of Kosovo. So for these reasons, we will continue our operation, but it is a crisis management operation with the aim to maintain a safe and secure environment in Kosovo and in the region. Now, the third core task, as defined in our strategic concept, is cooperative security. What is cooperative security? As the title indicates, it is about cooperation with partners to accomplish our security mission. We cooperate with partners. In Afghanistan, actually 22 partners plus the 28 allies. So all in all, an ISAF coalition of 50 nations. It is the largest coalition in recent history. It's a fourth of all nations in the world. That's a strong example of the notion of cooperative security. We need such partnerships. We saw the same last year when we conducted our operation in Libya. Countries from the region, and Sweden, by the way, contributed actively to our operation in Libya. Again, an example of operational cooperative security. Our KFOR operation in Kosovo also counts partners. So we need partners to contribute to our operations, but we will also need partners in the future. As we draw down operations in Afghanistan and elsewhere, we will continue to cooperate with partners to maintain our ability to work together. In Afghanistan, in Libya, in Kosovo, we have learned how to work together with our partners. We have strengthened what we call interoperability, the capability for our troops and our equipment to actually work together. We will maintain that ability in the future through education, training, exercises. That's also cooperative security. But we need partners for more than just operations. We also need them for political reasons. We consult with partners on security policy issues of common interest. Actually, we have clearly stated in our strategic concept that we are ready to consult with partners on any issue they might wish to bring to our table. That's cooperative security in practice, because we realize that in today's world, in a globalized economy, security is also globalized. So we need a global perspective, and we need partners across the globe. Again, that's the new NATO. It is a NATO that is very different from the NATO that operated during the Cold War, operated so successfully during the Cold War. But today we are confronted with new security challenges, and to address them effectively, we need cooperative security. We need partners across the globe. These three core tasks have been outlined in our strategic concept. Of course, it takes strong capabilities to fulfill these core tasks, and that's quite a challenge during this time of economic austerity. All governments are faced with declining defense budgets. So the good question is, how can we acquire the necessary military equipment to fulfill our core tasks while defense budgets are declining? It's a good question, but I think we also have a good answer. It's not easy, but we have adopted a new concept we call smart defense, because it is about a smarter way to spend money. We don't expect more money for defense in the very near future, but in exchange, we need to make more efficient use of our resources, and we call that smart defense. The essence of smart defense is to help each other, to pool and share resources, to go for multinational projects instead of purely national projects. We realize that for many allies, it will be increasingly difficult in the coming years to purchase expensive military equipment on their own. But if they help each other, then they can. We have already one excellent example of smart defense. As you know, we need more transport capacity, but transport aircrafts are very expensive. This is the reason why 10 allies plus 2 partners have pooled and shared resources to purchase expensive C-17 transport aircrafts. They have purchased 3. Individually, they couldn't, but by helping each other, they can. And then they buy flying hours on an individual basis. An excellent example of smart defense, and we want to expand that concept to cover broader areas as to how we can develop new capabilities in the future. For instance, the purchase of the very expensive drones that can be used to gather information, intelligence for surveillance and reconnaissance. Smart defense is also about common acquisition of military equipment. For instance, if a country wants new aircrafts, why not join efforts with other countries that are in the same situation? By purchasing together, they can probably get some rebates. It's also about more down-to-earth activities, such as maintenance of military equipment. For instance, upgrades of old aircraft that could again be done in a joint effort. It's about common training. For instance, training of pilots is very expensive. So instead of going for national solutions, we can cooperate. It's about logistics, common deployment and withdrawals of military equipment. Instead of going for national solutions, we can go for multinational solutions. There are many, many examples as to how we can make more efficient use of resources in the coming years through more multinational cooperation. So, in conclusion, the future will be more teamwork. I have seen many pessimists and pundits argue that it will be increasingly difficult for NATO to maintain cohesion during a time of economic austerity because of declining defense budgets and all that. My view is quite the opposite. Because of the lack of money, we will need more cooperation. We will need to strengthen the glue that holds together our alliance. We will need more teamwork. So the 21st century security must be cooperative security, teamwork among allies, other nations and organizations with shared interests and values. Global challenges need global cooperation. And I hope that your simulation of the North Atlantic Council and other NATO committees will reflect that spirit. I look very much forward to hearing about your decisions and what you have learned about the decision-making process. And who knows, this may be a good grounding for some of you to come back here in the future, and who knows, maybe one of you will be one of the coming Secretary Generals of this organization.